Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you are watching NewsX, the Eurozone. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines coming out of the European continent. Russia says its troops have pushed into Pokrovsk, a key transport hub in eastern Ukraine, after heavy fighting near the railway station. Kyiv insists its forces are still holding the front lines despite Russian gains. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky tells reporters that Pokrovsk remained under severe pressure, but that forces are holding out. The president also says that Ukraine needs to raise $750 million to secure gas imports as the biting Eastern European winter approaches. A Romanian worker has died after being trapped for hours under rubble when part of the medieval Torre del Conti near the Colosseum collapsed in Rome. Authorities say sections of the 29-metre tower fell twice as rescuers struggled to secure the structure. Chancellor Rachel Reeves says Britain faces hard choices as she prepares her next budget, warning tax rises may be needed to avoid a return to austerity. She blamed the previous Conservative government for the state of the economy. EU climate ministers hold last-minute talks in Brussels to set a new emissions goal before COP30 in Brazil. Failure to agree could damage the bloc's green credibility as countries clash over foreign carbon credits and industry pressures. China accuses the Netherlands of failing to help resolve the seizure of chip maker Nexperia, warning export controls on China-made products could disrupt global supply chains. The warning comes just days after Beijing began granting exemptions. A 20-year-old man has been stabbed to death and 2 others injured on the Greek island of Evia in attacks linked to football rivalries. Police have arrested 5 suspects as Greece grapples with a surge in hooliganism and sports-related crimes. A Ukrainian man accused of coordinating the 2022 Nord Stream pipeline sabotage has launched a hunger strike, his lawyer has said. An Italian court last month approved his transfer to Germany under European extradition rules. Now this hour we have the latest from the war front in Ukraine, coming from the territory of Pokrovsk, a city that has witnessed intense hostilities between Russian and Ukrainian forces. The Russian Ministry of Defense has claimed that Russian forces have encircled Ukrainians in the city and will continue their quote-unquote destruction in Pokrovsk. The ministry also mentioned a similar situation in the area of Kupiansk, where Ukrainian forces have also reportedly been encircled by the Russians. Okay, we're now joined by Professor Veselin Popovsky. He is a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School, and he joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Russia claims that its forces have encircled these Ukrainian troops in the Pokrovsk region, and also, of course, tightening pressure in Kupiansk. How credible are these claims at this stage of the war, Professor Popovsky?
Not very credible. We have exactly the counter information from Kiev, from Ukraine, that they are holding, and they're actually reinforcing their troops there, both in Pokrovsk and in Kupiansk. By the way, those go. I just checked exactly a year ago in November 24. Russians were saying exactly the same. So the last 12 months, they couldn't capture a kind of a very small size of a city in Ukraine. But still, it's a serious situation. There is a heavy fight. We don't know what will happen in the next days. Ukrainians are holding to that because it's a major transportation hub, and it is important to secure the road to Kramatorsk and Slavyansk. These are two major cities which are in Donetsk part of Ukraine. So for that matter, Pokrovsk is important, nothing else. It's all the population is evacuated long time ago. That basically it's a destroyed city already, and the only significance are the roads around it. In fact, the Ukrainians reported that they are not surrounded, but the roads that brings the supplies to them is heavily shelled by the Russian artillery. So the supplies are under jeopardy. And for that matter, they may decide to withdraw if those supply routes to Pokrovsk do not hold, and somehow to try to stop the Russian advance outside Pokrovsk. So effectively, it's more symbolic meaning here, whether Russia will finally, as I said, after more than a year, capture Pokrovsk. But if so, it will not change much on the battlefield either. Let's also remember that the Russians lost probably tens of thousands of soldiers only on that destination for the last year. So it's a very heavy price to pay with 10,000 of Russian soldiers in Pokrovsk to capture a city with some significance, but nothing major in terms of advance on the battlefield. Obviously, here Russia would like to report some success because everything else fails. They couldn't get a meeting with Donald Trump in Budapest, couldn't stop the supplies for modern technology and modern weaponry to Ukraine, which will continue, including from the United States. They couldn't get anything out of Donald Trump. In fact, the opposite. Donald Trump is now finally very firmly supporting Ukraine and basically blaming Russia for the lack of any progress on ceasefire or peace deal.
Yes, and of course, winter is approaching. If Pokrovsk did fall, what would that mean for both the Donetsk region and of course also the broader sense of the war in general?
Still, there is a lot of territory of Donetsk region left, even if Pokrovsk fails. The biggest cities there are Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. And they are on a kind of a distance from Pokrovsk. So Ukrainians, obviously, over the last years have built solid protection lines, mines, and if Russia decides to take the entire Donetsk region, it will take years and hundreds of thousands of soldiers dead. So this is really a question for Putin. How many lives he wants to sacrifice? And money, because all of this costs a lot of money. How many billions of dollars and how many human lives in 6 digits he's happy to sacrifice to get all Donetsk, only Donetsk region. We are not talking about Zaporozhye and Kherson, two regions that he claimed in the constitution, but they are far, far away from any possible. Even theoretically, I think those two cannot be captured. All the military experts say Zaporozhye and Kherson are impossible. So that's why Putin limits his ambition to Donetsk region, but that is a long task and it requires billions of dollars and it requires also 6-digit soldiers dead.
Yes, Professor Popovsky, do stay with us. Thank you very much for giving us your insight on that. We will, of course, bring you all the updates coming out of that ongoing battle in Pokrovsk and the Ukraine war as soon as we get them here. But we stay in Eastern Europe for our next story. And protesters have gathered outside the Serbian parliament in the capital of Belgrade in a rally against President Alexander Vucic's government in support of a hunger strike launched by Dajana Horka, whose son was among the 16 people killed when the roof of a renovated railway station collapsed. Herka and her supporters remained outside a fence that separated them from a tent area occupied by Vucic's supporters, who have been blocking the boulevard in front of the Parliament building since March. Meanwhile, the Interior Ministry has said that at least 37 people were arrested during the protests, and while the police have stated that the charges included violating public order and peace and causing incidents during an unannounced public gathering. This Novi Sad train station roof collapse has caused hugely widespread alarm throughout Serbia, throughout the entire year. Why has this accident that killed 16 people hit so deep within Serbian society?
Well, certainly that was the end drop of the water to spill over, and for that matter, yes, it was protest not only because of the train station, but generally of disillusionment and disappointment with this government, which becomes totally authoritarian. It denies human rights, it arrests protesters, corrupted. There were a lot of revelations that a lot of corruption is going on all over the various ranks of the power structure in Serbia over time. And what we see is exactly 1 year later, after the train station roof collapsed, we have a hunger strike by the mother of one of the victims, Herka, and obviously a lot of protesters in Belgrade, in the big capital of Serbia, are gathering in support of her because she demands what everybody else demands: democracy, respect for human rights, rule of law, anti-corruption, what all the other countries in Europe have already achieved. Serbia goes into the same direction, obviously, that it is very unhappy with the Vucic presidency, and not least because he is also kind of a pro-Russian, pro-Putin type of politician. And for that matter, Serbian people have all the rights to express their freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and to demand change through democratic elections. So the situation is very tense in Belgrade over the last 48 hours already. And we are watching, and we will see what happens there too. But hopefully, again, this protest will lead to regime change, and Serbian people will finally have their own choices of democratic government and freedoms like all the other European and other countries in the world.
Yes, Professor Popovsky, thank you very much for bringing us that insight and those updates. Really appreciate you joining us here on NewsX World. We stay in Europe for our next story, and we head to Italy. And a Romanian worker who was trapped for hours under the rubble of a partially collapsed medieval tower near the Colosseum in central Rome has now died. According to reports, the man was pulled out of the tower by emergency services late on Monday after about 11 hours, but was in a state of cardiac arrest when he arrived at the hospital and was declared dead. A second Romanian worker was pulled out almost immediately and hospitalized with serious but not life-threatening head injuries, while 2 more workers suffered minor injuries and declined hospital treatment. The tower, which was due to be converted into a museum and conference space, is located halfway along the Via dei Fori Imperiali, the broad avenue that leads from central Piazza Venezia to the Colosseum. Let's in fact listen in to some of the local officials and what they had to say.
È che sarà molto lunga e complessa perché il rischio di crollo è altissimo. Ci proveremo in tutte le maniere, la priorità assoluta è salvare questa vita umana, però sarà un'operazione lunga.
Now, EU climate ministers will make a last-ditch attempt to pass a new climate change target in an effort to avoid going to the UN COP30 summit in Brazil empty-handed. Failure to agree could undermine the European Union's claim to leadership at COP30 talks, which will test the will of major economies to keep fighting climate change despite opposition from US President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, countries including China, Britain and Australia have already submitted new climate targets ahead of the summit in Brazil. But the EU, which has some of the world's most ambitious CO2 cutting policies, have struggled to contain a backlash from industries and governments sceptical that it can afford the measures alongside defence and industrial priorities. EU members failed to agree on a 2040 climate target in September, leaving them scrambling for a deal days before European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen meets other world leaders at COP30 in Belém, Brazil. Okay, we're now joined by Shyam Batra. He's a former London mayoral candidate and he joins us live from London in the UK. Okay, hopefully Shyam joins us in just a second. Now, of course, the 27 member bloc of the European Union, of course, contains 27 different governments, some of which are now climate skeptics. One of them, but being Poland, of course, one of the most obstructive member states on climate. They historically vetoed the 2050 EU climate neutrality target in 2019. Okay, we are now joined by Shyam Batra, the former London mayoral candidate. Thank you very much, Shyam, for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to have you. Of course, the European Union, 27 member countries, and now with the rise of right-wing politics throughout Europe, there is some climate skepticism going on. Do you think in this world of Donald Trump and, of course, the challenges that European economies face as it is, even without these climate measures going on, do you think that the bloc will be able to find an agreement in reaching a climate emissions target that all can agree to?
It's the first bit, I'm afraid. Sorry, because there was no signal on your voice. But I assume you're talking about climate change, etc. I mean, we in Britain now are in the belief that climate change doesn't really exist. In fact, Bill Gates clearly told Trump that it's not real. So what is climate change about? I mean, they're taking money from all of us, our countries, and using it in the words of climate change. You can't change the climate. How can you even think about change?
I do apologise here. What I wanted to speak to you about is of course, the European Union has 27 countries in it, some of which are sceptical on climate change, others of which have very liberal governments who are leading the force forward for it. Of course, you have people like Viktor Orban in Hungary, among others, who oppose certain climate meets. What I'm asking is that you think with the different governments, these different ministers in the European Union, that they will be able to reach an agreement in order to attend that COP30 summit in Brazil.
Right. Well, I missed most of that because your signal is coming in and out.
Apologies.
So, yeah. So, well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, the summit is coming or not coming. As I said to you before, the climate change, I think, is not a true story at all. All will be dished out soon, I'm sure. But they're raising money for what? You tell me, because only when they have these meetings, it's all for raising money for changing the climate or helping the climate to change. But I stand by what I say. I don't believe in this climate change business. It's completely wrong.
Okay, Shyam Batra, thank you very much. Do stay with us as we have further updates, this time coming out of the United Kingdom, where British Finance Minister Rachel Reeves has framed her second annual budget as one of the hard choices to secure public spending while reducing Britain's debt, signalling possible broad tax rises to avoid a return to austerity. Just 3 weeks before delivering the budget, Reeves has set out the difficult economic backdrop she was wrestling with, pointing to high debt levels, low productivity and stubborn inflation. Reeves has now vowed to do what she says is necessary nor popular in the upcoming November budget. Let's take a listen into her statements.
I will make the choices necessary to deliver strong foundations for our economy. My budget, led by this government's values of fairness and opportunity, and focused entirely on the priorities of the British people, protecting our NHS, reducing our national debt, and improving the cost of living. There is a lot of speculation about the choices that I will make. I understand that. These are important choices that will shape the future of our country for years to come. The decision to pursue a policy of austerity after the financial crisis dealt a hammer blow to our economy, gutting our public services and severing the flows of investment that would have put our country on a path to recovery. The years that followed were characterised by instability and indecision, with crucial capital investment continually sacrificed and hard decisions put off again and again.
We're once again joined by Shyam Batra to discuss this. Of course, Shyam, the Labour government is incredibly unpopular in Britain right now, along with the Chancellor. However, they do still hold a 147-seat majority in the House of Commons. Now, of course, Rachel Reeves consistently cites a huge $20 to $30 billion black hole that the previous Conservative government left. What are your thoughts on how the British public might take this news from the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves?
I think they're gasping for breath. We all are, because I've been told, and I'm not sure this is factual information, but the VAT, for example, where the threshold is 85,000 at the moment, is going to be dropped to 30,000, which means more people are going to pay more taxes. The reason they're doing this, I think, is that I don't believe that there was a significant black hole, as they keep saying. If there was a black hole, how can they pay £600 million to Ukraine and offer more money and sort out the Chagos Islands as well? All our money is being dissipated, and now the poor taxpayers in England have to start paying, and we're going to head back to austerity again. The property market here is slumping. The shares are up and down. The systems are all broken. How do we expect to get a chancellor? A chancellor should be almost like a Robin Hood, giving back to people. We've had enough of 14 years of pretty much austerity under the Conservative government, and they say they were left a black hole. How can they pay £600 million just to Ukraine alone on just one hit? Then tell us.
Shyam, for those who don't know and viewers that are watching the programme, of course, the Labour government is increasingly very, very unpopular in the United Kingdom, and Keir Starmer's leadership in particular. Could you tell us a bit more about some of those economic policies that Labour have introduced since their landslide victory last year?
What economic policies? They've actually done not a thing, actually. I've been at Question Time mostly every week listening to the rhetoric, but nothing seems to be getting done. They say that there's 0.3% increase in our business in the country, but people are getting on and doing their work they can. You've got to remember that it's the public that actually make the money for people, for governments. The government should be working for us. They're not doing that. They promised a lot of things, delivered absolutely nothing yet again. It's the same story. You know, things like they said that they weren't going to increase taxes. How come perhaps when the budget comes, Rachel Reeves is going to increase taxes, you know, to raise more money? But they didn't ask us when they gave money away. They should be asking the public. They should be doing regular referendums because they clearly don't know what they're doing as a party. I'm very shocked at the way they've turned up with a majority. People were fed up with the last government and gave them the full mandate. Now
Yes.
look what's happened. We've got no freedom of speech here either.
Okay.
So I don't think that I don't think Rachel Reeves' budget is going to be very exciting.
Shayan Batra, thank you very much for joining us. Pleasure to have you here on NewsX World. Thank you for taking the time. We now move over to Scandinavia for our next story. And Norway's sovereign wealth fund, the world's largest, has said that it would vote against ratifying Tesla CEO Elon Musk's proposed compensation package. The compensation contains shares up to $1 trillion. And investors will decide on November the 6th whether to approve said package. It will likely be the largest ever CEO compensation agreement in history. So far, the Norwegian Wealth Fund is the largest outside Tesla investor to say how it plans to vote. The next largest to do so is Baron Capital, has meanwhile said it would back Musk's pay package. The company's largest institutional investors, including BlackRock, Vanguard and State Street, have yet to disclose their voting plans. Tesla's board is pushing for shareholders to approve the plan, with Chair Robin Delholm warning last week that Musk could leave the company if the deal is rejected. Well, that's a wrap on NewsX Eurozone. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.
Thank you.